Big LEZ'S League, an all rugby league experience. Hello, welcome back to Big LEZ'S League, an all rugby league experience. I'm your host, Big Les. We're going to be going through every single team's 1 to 17. We're going to fly through this as quickly as possible and go as deep as we can in the time that we have through each 17 for all 17 teams. It's our best 17 for the year. It is not our round one lineup. Hate doing round one lineups because obviously you have to take into account suspensions, player injuries, things like that. It doesn't even matter anyway. I love talking about the best 17 that they can possibly build with the players that they have available for the upcoming season. We haven't taken into account any round one suspensions whatsoever. It is the best possible 17 that each team can get on the park, in my opinion, in the 2024 season. So let's get 2025 season. Let's get underway. Starting off with the West Tigers. Let's go through this 17 and I'll explain it a little bit. We start off with Dream Buller at fullback. We've got Sania Taruva and Jarrell Skelton on the wings. We've got Justin Olam and Adam Dewey in the centres. I've got Olam and Taruva on the left side with Adam Dewey and Jarrell Skelton on the right. Maybe. Now that I think about it, it'll probably be Taruva on the right side because he did play a bit of right last year. Obviously went to the left towards the back end of the year. Doesn't really matter too much, but when you're just sort of trying to picture it, I guess Taruva and Dewey could be on the right side with Olam and Skelton on the left. It really doesn't matter. I think that's their best possible backline. Taruva, Olam, Dewey, and Skelton. Dewey in the centres, his best last year, obviously before he was injured towards the back end of the season again, I thought was quite good. So if he can get to that level and just maintain that and do a solid job week in, week out, defensively, he's all good. No injuries for Adam Dewey. That's what we want to see too in 2025. It's going to be a really strong-looking backline. So Buller at fullback. Got Taruva and Skelton on the wings with Justin Olam and Adam Dewey in the centres. You're also going to get a lot of go forward coming out of their own end too with those two absolute strike weapons there on the Stings. Let's talk about the halves. Obviously, it's Lachlan Galvin, Jerome Luai. We've got Terrell May and David Clemmer starting up front, mixing a bit of youth and experience there. I think Terrell May is going to be the new Stefano Utuikamanu in that team in the sense that he's going to be playing majority of the minutes. He's going to be playing around 50, 55 minutes, potentially even 60. And you're obviously going to get guys like Fanua Pole who come on for their 30-minute stints, Royce Hunt for about 20, 25 minutes, Alex Twall around the same. Clemmer around the same as well. Obviously looking at this rotation and how it's going to work, and I've sort of just given away my bench there as well. But yeah, Clemmer for me starts. I think he's a great starting front rower. As I said, he brings that experience into the pack as well. So Clemmer and May up front. I've got Api Coruscant at 9, obviously. Samuel Afanu, I've got him on the left edge. A lot of people have thrown this guy on the right, and I agree. Alex Seyfarth, I think that he'll start at right back row. I think he's just been so unchained, and it's just been sort of let loose through the middle. They haven't really found him a role. I just think if they can stick him on that right edge, get him running some good lines, and sort of just really, I guess, breed his football in the way of the right back rower, and just get him to play that style of football. Simplify his game a lot. I think that Alex Seyfarth could be a really solid back rower and a real good replacement as well for John Bateman. We've got Jack Burt at 13, and then we've got Talon De Silva, Fanua Pole, Royce Hunt, and Alex Twall on the bench. All front rowers on the bench. Talon De Silva, obviously, the only non-front rower there, the utility in the number 14 jersey. I think that Appy will need that 14 there. I think Talon De Silva's too talented to be in reserve grade. I think he's ready to take that 14 jersey on. I really like the footy that I saw from Talon De Silva too in 2024. So that's my 17. 18th man, I've got Justin Matamua. I think that he'll just scrape, getting into first grade. I think that he'll be in and out of first grade throughout the year, potentially maybe even slotting into a back row sort of role as well, depending on how this side does look. And, if they do want to have a guy that can slot into the back row coming off the bench, because you got Pole, you got Royce Hunt, you got Alex Twall. Realistically, wouldn't be throwing any of those guys into the back row. They're all going to sort of come on in the middle. I think Jack Bird will play close to 80 minutes too, there in the 13 jersey, if not the full game. You've obviously got that extra middle there in an Alex Twal if Jack Bird can't play the full 80 minutes. Not saying that Alex Twal just won't get on. I think that he'll have, as I said, around 20, 25 minutes through the middle. How that rotation is going to work is going to be really interesting, but that's my best Tigers 17. Let's move on to the Rabbitohs for 2025. I've got Latrell Mitchell at fullback. I've got Alex Johnston and Tyrone Munro on the wings. As I said, not taking into account the fact that Alex Johnston has an injury and won't be back in for a few rounds. I'm just throwing him straight in there. Alex Johnston, left wing in their best 17. He's going to be there. With Tyrone Munro, obviously, there on that right side. Both of these guys can score tries upon tries upon tries. You've got to have him in there. I do think, though, with Alex Johnston, and we did make the call on the Instagram only a few weeks ago, I think that his position is under threat. We saw it happen with Nate Merritt only a few years ago when he was obviously breaking a try-scoring record himself. As soon as he broke the record, he was out of first grade. So I do think that with these recent injuries for Alex Johnston, the amount of footy that he did play in 2024, Wayne Bennett, obviously a lot of talk around him and what he wanted out of Alex Johnston the previous time that he was with the South Sydney Rabbitohs. I do think that Alex Johnston's position is under threat. And when you've got a guy like Fletcher Myers in the lower grades who's absolutely carving up, I do think that Alex Johnston's position is under threat, and would definitely be one to watch as we get closer to the end of the 2025 season. Jack Whiten and Campbell Graham in the centres. Jack Whiten on that left side with Campbell Graham on the right. My right side is Tyrone Munro and Campbell Graham. Left is Jack Whiten and Alex Johnston. Let's move through the rest of the side. Cody Walker and Lewis Dodd in the halves. I was a bit anti Lewis Dodd to start the year, but he's on a pretty decent pay packet to go to South Sydney, and I think that as well. Just watching a little bit of him training, speaking with the Rabbitohs radio boys as well, and obviously they get down to training a lot more than I do. It looks like Lewis Dodd is probably the front runner, and he's training really well. Looks really fit, really, really silky with his ball playing as well. I think that Lewis Dodd will end up winning that 7 jersey, and in their best 17, he'll be the number 7. And if Wayne Bennett can work his wonders on another number 7 like he has done with Isaiah Katoa over the past 2 to 3 years, I am certainly looking forward to Lewis Dodd, carving up for South Sydney as we get close to the end of the season when everything starts to click. That's going to be really fun to watch. Let's go through the rest of the sides. Rabbitohs and Keon Kalol-Matangi in the front row. I've got Keon moving into the middle in 2025. I think that the best footy we saw from Keon in 2024 was him through the middle of the field. He suits that role really well, and when South Sydney lack a little bit of size through the middle, he provides that in spades. And the toughness that he played with through the middle, a bit of a ball playing ability as well, which is becoming more and more common with these middles as we go into the future of the game. I think that Keon is more suited to the middle of the field. Tevita Totola up front there. People are forgetting how good Tevita Totola is and the footy that he was playing before, obviously, that injury. People were talking about him coming off the bench for Origin. So, Tevita Totola, Keon Kalol-Matangi, I think both of those guys start. Saliva Havili is my starting number 9. And I guess to explain this a little bit more, I'm sort of going for a more Wayne Bennett style 17 here with Havili there in the number 9 jersey. Wayne Bennett, he doesn't like those sparky, darty number 9s. He likes a tough, get through your tackles, get through your sets number 9. And Havili is that. I think starting wise, when you're looking at, very similar to Mitch Kenny, Api Coruscant, Harry Grant, Brandon Smith, these sort of, 9 and 14 combinations. I think South Sydney can, replicate that slightly by having a Saliva Havili there starting at 9, who can then transition into a 13 role if Cam Murray does need a spell. And with Cam Murray and the injuries that he's had over the past few years, I think that he's needed at the club. So Havili is at 9. I've got Ewan Aiken and Tallis Duncan in the back row. Ewan Aiken to start on the left side, Tallis Duncan to start on the right side. I've got Cam Murray at 13, and then Jamie Humphries is my 14. The fact that he can jump into the halves or at 9, he has that roaming value as well there at 14. I think that they can, as I said, replicate that 9 and 14 combination of a Mitch Kenny, Api Coruscant, Harry Grant, Brandon Smith, Harry Grant, Ben Hunt that we've seen in the Origin Arena. I think they can replicate this to a greater extent because Havili is more suited to obviously moving into the middle of the field. He has played a lot of middle over the past 2 years at South Sydney. So Jamie Humphries, he's my 14. He comes on as that darty number 9, a bit of X factor as well off the bench, or maybe in a roaming capacity, depending on how the game's going, how Havili's going there at 9 as well. I think that's really attractive. When you're looking at how this rotation is going to work best. David Mawali's coming off the bench for me is the big impact man. I think that he could push for a starting spot too. He's one of the fitter front rowers in camp at the moment. Just looking at training and talking with the Rabbitohs radio boys, he looks to be the fittest. Jai Arrow and Lachlan Hubner. Lachlan Huber, second fittest, maybe even the fittest forward in that South Sydney pack at the moment. He has been training the house down, super hard worker, just going at 110 miles an hour. He is going to surprise a lot of people and be in this 17, in my opinion, if not at the start of the year. By the end of the year, he's going to be a mainstay in this 17. Just you watch. Pistol Pete, Peter Mamazoulis, he's my 18th man. I think that he'll be in and out of first grade for a little bit, depending on injuries and things like that, or if, this 9 and 14 combination that I think is going to work doesn't, maybe Pistol Pete comes back into the side, or maybe he is the guy that Wayne Bennett wants to go for. But obviously, with Damien Cook leaving to go to the Dragons and, the previous comments about Wayne Bennett liking these more, stocky and, defensively orientated number 9s, I think that Havili is probably the best shout, to be honest, in that number 9 jersey. Let's get stuck into the Parramatta Eels and their side for 2025. Isaiah Yonge looks like he's got the first jump on the fullback jersey. I've got Josh Adokar and Sean Russell there on the wings. I've got Zach Lomax and Will Penasini in the centres. Lomax to play on the left side with Will Penasini on the right. Obviously it's confirmed that Zach Lomax will be playing centre. I don't think you can push Will Penasini out of that right centre spot. He's so good there. He has played a little bit of left centre towards the back end of the year when there was injuries in that Parramatta Eels side in the back line. But I really like him on the right side. I think that Lomax, Adokar, that combination on the left could be really deadly. So, it'll be interesting to see what they do there, the Parramatta Eels. But for me, it's Lomax, Adokar left, Penasini, Russell right. Really like Sean Russell, and I think that he's going to get the jumper over a lot of these other guys if he does train the house down. During the preseason, you've obviously got Hayes Dunster there as well, looking to push for a spot back in this team. He's 27 years of age too. Hayes Dunster was just crept on a lot of people, including myself, but he'll be looking for a spot back in this side. You've got a few other guys as well that could be pushing for a spot, especially some of these new Bulldogs recruits like Jordan Simrani, Joash Papali'i looking for centre spots as well. Maybe they make a push into this side at some stage throughout the year. In my perfect world, I probably would have rather kept Lomax on the wing on that right side with Penasini and had that as a combination with Russell and Adokar on the left side. But as I said, it's confirmed that Lomax is playing centre. It's, silly to pretend otherwise. So Lomax to left centre is probably the best way to go for Parramatta. Dylan Brown, Mitch Moses in the halves. That's an obvious one. I've got Joe Ofahengaue starting in the front row with Sean Lane. Very different to how they were shaped last year, obviously. Joe Ofahengaue playing a lot of lock forward. I don't think we see any big boppers playing 13 in 2025. I think that they are going to go for a more mobile pack. It's why I've got Sean Lane in the front row. I think that he'll transition into a middle forward. I really liked the footy that I saw from him in the middle, and if he can get that offload back into his game and obviously all those characteristics that we loved from Sean Lane during the 2022 season, I believe it was, I think that he could excel in the middle, and he could be one of the better middles in the competition too if he gets that offloading ability and the footwork back, but through the middle of the field rather than on that left edge. He could be a real threat there through the middle, so I think Sean Lane transitions into a starting middle. Ofa Ngawe as well, a bit of a veteran front row forwards. Pairing, Brendan Hands is there at 9. I've got Kelma Tuolangi and Bryce Cartwright in the back row. Kelma Tuolangi on the left side. I've got Bryce Cartwright on the right side. Jermaine Hopgood is at 13. I've got Joey Lussick, Ryan Madison, Junior Boldo, and Jack Williams off the bench. As I said, you're going for a more mobile pack. You got Maddo there, you got Williams there, who are just going to provide a little bit of X factor. Maddo with the offloading ability and the footwork and just everything that he can provide there, going through the middle like we saw at the back end of the 2024 season. Jack Williams is going to be so great for this side as well, and he'll be putting a lot of pressure to start at 13 over a guy like Jermaine Hopgood as well, if they want to throw him onto an edge like they did at one stage throughout last year or the year before. But Jermaine Hopgood, I think his best footy's in the middle. I think they can pretty much replicate Cam Murray's game and turn him into a second Cam Murray too, Jermaine Hopgood. So that's going to be really cool to see. Really liking how Parramatta's shaping up going into next year. Gold Coast Titans. Now, this is where things get controversial, and I can already see the hate comments coming in. So I am going to just go through the 17. I'll give a little bit of explanation. I've given a lot of explanation when we talked about AJ Brimson and the biggest questions around each NRL club, which is obviously on the audio podcast now on Spotify. To go on to the YouTube, my link tree is going to be on there. Go to Spotify, listen to that. But we did talk a lot about how this Titans side could be shaped and where we could see AJ Brimson play by the end of the year. We made a big call, and you're about to hear it now again here. Let's go through this 17. I've got Keano Kinney at fullback. I've got Alafiana Khan-Pereira starting on the left wing with Philip Sami starting on the right. Jojo Fafita, rumours suggest that he's going to be playing in the centres in 2025. So I've got him at right centre with Brian Kelly at left centre. It's pretty similar to what the Titans had, other than obviously swapping out Philip Sami and Jojo Fafita. But I think this is their best backline going into next year. Jaden Campbell is my 6. Now, this is where people are going to start freaking out. Fuck, where's he putting AJ Brimson? I've thrown him into the number 7 jersey. I think that here's a real opportunity that they could turn him into a second Jerome Hughes, and they could play him like that. There's a full breakdown of that. We talk a lot about how that could work. But if they can, replicate Jerome Hughes' game, that hybrid fullback, halfback sort of role, very run-centric. They work on his kicking game, obviously, AJ Brimson, and they keep him injury-free. We know that his defense is up to it. I think that they could really excel in a number 7 jersey, and that's really building for the future. You're keeping Keano Kinney, Jaden Campbell, and AJ Brimson, who you want to keep all into this Titans side for the future. I think that's the way you do it. Now, everyone's going to be asking, where does Kieran Foran come in? I've got him at 9. I've got him starting at hooker. Obviously played there for the Kiwis. It's his second last year at the Gold Coast Titans of his career as well. So I don't think he's going to be too shy from obviously moving into another role to obviously accommodate them building for the future here at the Gold Coast Titans. Front row is Big Tino starting up front with Regan Campbell-Gillard. A lot of size up front too, contrasting from the rest of the pack and how that's going, to be shaped, or, just the mobility of this side in general, and, the very run-centric side that I've built, very explosive side that I've built, does contrast from that a little bit. Tino and Regan Campbell-Gillard up front, which I sort of like too. I think that it makes this side work, and when I read out the rest of the side, you'll sort of understand. Kieran Foran there at 9, obviously. Dave Fafita left back row. Bo Firma right back row. I've got Chris Randall at 13. So there you go. A bit more mobility there. Obviously, that ball player through the middle. I really loved him at 13 in 2024. I really hope they can make it work in 2025. Sam Verrills is the bench number 9, there in the 14. I've got Mo Fodawaker, Jamin Jolliffe, and Carter Gordon in jersey number 17, who can come on in the back row. He can come on at lock as well, which I think is probably most likely where he's going to end up as they train him up as a potential 7 option as well. So that's my 17. It's very different to traditional 17s. And obviously the big call there with AJ at 7. I'm ready for the comment section, don't worry. But that's my 17 for the Gold Coast Titans at the moment. Let's move into the New Zealand Warriors and their side going into the 2025 season. I have got Chance Nickel-Clockstad starting at fullback. I've got Roger Tuivasa-Sheck and Dallin Watene-Zelezniak on the wings. I'd be giving Roger a roaming license. He'd play left wing, along with this centre that I think is going to be a mainstay in this Warriors team too, by the midpoint to the end of the year, maybe even at the start, based on the footy we saw in 2024. But Roger, he'll be roaming. I've given him that roaming license to come in and obviously play like a second fullback, a little bit similar to what we saw from Tom Trbojevic for the Kangaroos. But yeah, Roger's on the wing. I've got obviously him and Chance probably alternating from fullback as well, like we've seen with a lot of other clubs as well. But yeah, Roger there on the wing with Dallin Watene-Zelezniak. Centers are Ali Leatua, who I think will be the left centre. Rocco Berry on the right side. People forgot how good Rocco Berry was playing, at the midpoint of the year. Built himself up really nicely. Looks to be bigger again too, Rocco Berry, as we look at some of the photos from the preseason. So he's going to be a real strike weapon there with Dallin Watene-Zelezniak on that right side. And once that combo really sinks, they're going to be so dangerous, the New Zealand Warriors. Ali Leatua, I really like him. I think that he'll be a mainstay, as I said, hopefully by the end of the year for the New Zealand Warriors. I've got Tamale Martin and Luke Metcalf in the halves. I think that Metcalf will start at halfback, with Tamale Martin sitting at 5'8". I love Martin going down the left side, I think that's his best, so I'm going to keep him on that left side. Luke Metcalf, he's going to be the king of the right side. He's pretty much going to be running this 17 as well. Lukey Metcalf, just really steering the ship. I want to give him the keys and just see how he goes in that number 7 jersey. He's very flashy. He's a really talented footballer, and if he can play anything like Sean Johnson did at the start of his career, that is just going to be chef's kiss as we move further throughout this season as well. And the Warriors are just going to be able to play some really nice football. Fisher Harris and Mitch Barnett up front. I think that's pretty obvious. Wayne Egan at 9. I've got Kurt Capewell starting left back row. Really shocked me the footy that he played towards the back end of the year. Obviously, with a pretty up and down season for Kurt Capewell, came back from injury and was pretty poor. Obviously played Origin. Confidence went through the roof and then had a really strong end to the year, scored a few tries. I'm hoping that he sort of maintains that form and continues on into this 2025 season. Jackson Ford as well. I want to keep him in the back row. I don't want him anywhere near the middle. Keep him in the back row. He's a back rower. Keep him there. On that right side, Dylan Walker's my 13. Now, look, it's not disrespectful to Tohu Harris. I just think this is where Tohu Harris is at this stage of his career, whereby he comes through the middle of the field rather than obviously playing close to the 80 minutes at 13. I just don't think it does many favours for Tohu Harris, who just seems to have a new injury every single week and plays through it too. I'd rather just have him coming off the bench, playing 30, 35 minutes through the middle of the field as a front rower rather than, spending most of the game at 13 and just absolutely ruining his body. And that's going to be horrid for him post-career. Dylan Walker suits the style of footy that the Warriors wanted to play, and we saw that when he started at 13 a few times for the Warriors throughout the season as well. Dylan Walker, I think that is going to be his position moving forward there in the 13 jersey. Aaron Clark, Tohu Harris, Leka Halasima, and Tane Tuiapiki on the bench. Aaron Clark will most likely come on either at 9 or at 13, depending on how Wade Egan goes in the number 9 jersey throughout the game and how he's feeling. Tohu Harris, Leka Halasima, both of those guys to come through the middle. Leka, obviously, with the versatility to slot through on an edge if there's injuries and things like that. And then Tane Tuiapiki just comes on as that roamer, as that real X-factor play there in jersey 17. I think they've got the pack where it just suits that. You've got guys that play big minutes through the middle in Fisher Harris, in Barnett. I feel like their pack suits having a guy like Tane Tuiapiki there in jersey number 17 who can just come on as that X factor, and I think he's just too good to leave out of the 17 too. So Tane Tuiapiki, he is jersey number 17. It'll either be him or, in my opinion, Zion Mai'u, who's pretty much really close to punching through and making a real audition for himself for first grade. I think that he isn't too far off, locking in a spot full time either. All right, let's move on to the Brisbane Broncos. Let's go through their 17 for next season. I've got Reece Walsh at fullback. That's a pretty obvious one. Jesse Arthurs and Selwyn Cobbo on the wings. It sounds like Cobbo could be moved onto the wing per reports and obviously the little bits of knowledge that we've heard from Madge Maguire as the preseason has gotten underway. He sort of alluded to the fact that we could see Selwyn Cobbo there on the wing, so I've got him on the Jeremy Sting. I also think that you've got a guy that can generate so much power coming out of his own end. He can do some great things there on the wing. We've seen some great footy from him on the wing as well. Selwyn Cobbo for me on the wing. It's not a no-brainer because he can do some great work in the centres as well, like we've seen in the 2024 season, but I love him on the wing. I think that he's such a damaging winger. So Selwyn Cobbo's there on the wing. That pushes Dean Mariner into the centres with Tony Staggs. I'd have Mariner and Arthurs on the left with Tony Staggs and Selwyn Cobbo on the same side, on that right side. That would be insane. It looks like with Mam obviously out till round 10, you're going to have Ben Hunt there in the number 6, Adam Reynolds in the number 7. After round 10... you're more likely to obviously see Mam go into that number 6 role. Obviously, then Ben Hunt would probably progress to 14. I think that with the promises reportedly to Moser for him to be in that number 9 jersey from the 2025 season, I think that's where you're going to realistically see him for majority of the year, or at least by the end of the year, he is in that number 9 jersey. Ben Hunt, the 14 post round 10. We'll talk about the 14 jersey and who we have in there in the meantime in a second. We've got Payne Haas and Corey Jensen there in the front row. Obviously, Moser starting at 9. Brendan Piacorda, I've got him on the left back row with Jordan Ricky on the right side. Paddy Carrigan is there at 13. And then we've got Corey Pakes, Ben Tekorda, Kobe Hetherington, and Xavier Willison on the bench. I really like how that bench is rounded as well. You've got Kobe Hetherington that can play a little bit of edge back row, can play a little bit in the middle. Willison is probably the future of that Broncos side too. Corey Jensen, he's in his early 30s at the moment. He's only got probably 4 years left in him, if that. Obviously going to have a guy like Xavier Willison who's realistically going to progress his way into that starting front row spot for the future. He is such a talent as well, Xavier Willison, and they've got to keep him at the Brisbane Broncos, if they want to be successful in years to come too. He, as I said, is the future through the middle there for them. Ben Tekorda, he's the same thing. The future there for the Brisbane Broncos in the middle forwards. Really, really solid front rower. I loved the footy that we've seen from him so far in the only 1 or 2 games that we've seen of Ben Tekorda. Excited to see him really get some more time in this team as well moving forward. So Corey Pakes would be the temporary 14. As I said, after round 9, you'd probably see Mam go back to 6. Hunt goes to 14. Corey Pakes drops out, unfortunately, because Moser, as I said, he is the future there in the number 9 jersey for the Brisbane Broncos. He's had comparisons to guys like Cameron Smith and things like that. I haven't seen too much of him in the lower grades, if I'm completely honest. But I am really excited to see some consistent footy with him in this 17 because the footy we got from him at the back end of 2024, it was something special. He has definitely got a lot of talent there. Blake Moser, once he fixes up his defence a little bit, he's going to be an absolute star. Illawarra Dragons, let's go through their side for 2025. I've got Gutho at fullback. I've got Christian Tuipulotu on the left side on the wing. On the right side, I've got Tyrell Sloan. In the centres, I've got Moses Sully and obviously Valentine Holmes there as well. Moses Sully, Christian Tuipulotu on the left side. I've got Tyrell Sloan and Val Holmes on the right side. I think that combo is going to be insane. Tyrell Sloan did his best work in 2024 and in years past on that right side. I think that's his favoured side of the field attacking, so I'd have him there on the right side. And look, I wouldn't be too shocked either if we get him and Gutho alternating from fullback to wing, mid-game and things like that. If we get a little bit of an alternation there and we do see Tyrell Sloan get some time roaming the field at fullback. Tyrell Sloan there on the wing with Val Holmes. You can get a lot worse centres to have inside you when learning a wing position than Valentine Holmes. I'm so excited to see how both of those go and, both of those guys go together, I should say. And, Tyrell Sloan in games past, and we've seen him in the Indigenous All-Stars games there on the right wing. He's been really special. So, can't wait to see how he goes there in 2025. I've got Kyle Flanagan and Lockie Ilias in the halves. I've got Kyle Flanagan there at 6 with Ilias at 7. I've got Francis Molo and Jack DeBellin there in the front row. I've got Jacob Little starting at 9. I think that with Damien Cook in the footy that we saw from him in a bit of a utility capacity, playing a bit of roaming lock forward, that's probably where we see him sort of come in for the Dragons. And with Little being the future, I think it is a little bit unfair on him to obviously push him to a 14 jersey when his form was outstanding in the 2024 season. So yeah, Little to start at 9 with Cookie coming off the bench. I've got DeBellin and Molo up front. I've got Jaden Sewer and Luciano Leilua there in the back row. I've got Tom Eisenhuth keeping his spot at 13. There was a lot of weird waiting around with Tom Eisenhuth because he didn't have a contract for next year at one stage. Only a few weeks ago. I think he re-signed a few months back, I should say. With the club. So I think that he'll keep his 13 jersey. Damien Cook, Hame Sele, Raymond Fight, Taylor Mariner, and Toby Couchman, I think, is the bench with Ryan Couchman pushing for a spot in the 18 capacity. That's what I think the side is going to look like. I think that's the best well-rounded side you're going to get to for the Dragons, and it's a very Shane Flanagan-esque looking team as well going into the 2025 season. I cannot wait to see Val Holmes and Gutho playing footy for the Dragons. That's going to be really fun to see. And, you know, if Lockie Ilias can have that confidence and play with a bit of confidence about him and obviously be able to direct these head honchos like your Val Holmeses, like your Clint Guthersons more so, you know, these sort of guys around the park, he's going to be something special there in the number 7 jersey too. Let's talk about the not Redcliffe Dolphins going into next season. Their side going into next year, how it's going to look. I've got Hammer at fullback. Obviously, with Trey Fuller out, I would have had a big call to push Hamiso Tabuai-Fidow to centre, and unfortunately, Jake Averillo probably goes to a 14 jersey. But, you know, obviously with Trey Fuller out for the season with an ACL injury, I do have Hammer there at fullback. I've got Jack Bostock and Jermaine Asako on the wings. I've got Jake Averillo, and Herbie Farnworth in the centres, similar to last season, if not the same. Cody Nikorima, Isaiah Katoa in the halves. I think that we're going to see Isaiah Katoa go to a real next level. Obviously, his third year playing first grade now. You know, there's going to be a lot of expectations around Isaiah Katoa. I cannot wait to see how he really just locks in this third season, and hopefully he stays in first grade for the full season as well. Daniel Saifidi and Tom Gilbert in the front row. I've got Jeremy Marshall-King at 9. You know, Tom Gilbert moving into the front row. I'm going off the basis that Tom Flegler just won't be available next season, and as unfortunate as that is, I think that's from the news that we're getting and obviously his recovery status and things like that. I think that's the realistic possibility that we've got to live with here. Tom Flegler most likely won't be available for the 2025 season. So Gilbert for me is starting up front. I think that he's going to have a breakout year 2. I think they're just going to really simplify his role. He's going to play through the middle, have a bit of a ball playing ability. Can obviously slot onto an edge mid-game as well, similar to a Mitch Barnett if they need him to. I really like that versatility that you do get from a Tom Gilbert. Daniel Saifidi, on the other hand, obviously, you know, a veteran forward in this side that's been brought in. He's a leader. I think that he is really going to be the head honcho front rower in this 17. Moving forward, I think that he'll, you know, really lock down that starting spot. So Daniel Saifidi and Tom Gilbert starting up front. I've got Marshall King at 9. I've got Colony Lemuelu to start on the left back row, along with Kulekefu Finefuiaki. Based off some shape videos that we've seen on the Dolphins' Instagram, starting on the right side, and I just love him starting regardless. I would have had him starting regardless anyway. A really solid back rower. He's got so much raw ability. He's just got a real engine on him. Can probably play the full game too. I'm really excited to just see him lock down that right back row spot. I think that he realistically will have that spot in his grasp to start the year in 2025. Max Psycho Plath at 13. There's been a lot of big calls around Max Plath, obviously making his Origin debut, and potentially the Maroons going in a little bit of a different direction with their recent series loss. But yeah, look, I think that if he can play decent enough footy, we could definitely have that conversation. But, he has to have a really big year just like he did in 2024 first. And if he plays even close to how he did last year, he'll definitely be in the discussion. Kurt Donahue, I love Kurt Donahue. I've raved so much about him on the podcast. Really talented footballer. We see that every year, or at least over the past 2 years when he's played for Fiji. Just the sheer level of talent that this guy has. So, Kurt Donahue, for me, he is at 14. He just has so much utility value. You can play pretty much anywhere from 1 to 13, and that's what you want from your utility. Felice Kafusi, I've got him there in jersey 15 to come off the bench as a front rower. I've got Mark Nichols doing the same, and Oren Keeley to have there as a backup lock forward or back rower, depending on if Lemuelu or Kulekefu Finefuyaki need a spell. But that is my 17, really well-rounded 17 as well for the not Redcliffe Dolphins going into the 2025 NRL season. Canberra Raiders, let's get stuck into the Canberra Raiders and what they might be looking like going into next year. The milk, for me, I've got the resurgence of Chevy Stewart. I think that obviously last season, the start of last season, it really wasn't his dream start, or the start that he thought he would have. I'm really looking forward to seeing him just go to another level in 2025 and really start to work his way into first grade. I really love Chevy Stewart. Very, very talented. We've seen that in that New South Wales under-19s game. He's just a phenomenal player, and I think that he can really, as I said, lock down that spot in 2025 if he plays some great footy to start the year in New South Wales Cup. But their best 17, he's there at fullback because the sheer talent that he has is just insane. And then when you pair that with a lot of other guys in this side, it's a very dangerous Raiders team moving forward into the future. But Chevy Stewart is my best fullback. He's got a great last name too, by the way. Xavier Savage and Albert Hopewade there on the wings. I've got Xavier Savage on the left side with Albert Hopewade too on the right. Ethan Strange, I've got him at left centre. I think that he'll be more of a centre. The best part of his game at 5'8" was his running game, and that's just looking at it from a realistic standpoint. I just don't think he is the best 5'8" in this 17. I think that he can be the best centre in this 17. If he really just puts his head down, really capitalises on that running game, can come in and roam a little bit. But I think that he could be a really good centre for the Raiders in 2025. Matsimoko on the right side. I love Matsimoko. He's one of my favourite players in this Raiders team, if not my favourite player in this Milk team. He is just such a weapon, and there was 2 games throughout the year, he popped his shoulder out and continued to play throughout the rest of the season, no weeks off. He's just an absolute workhorse. He's just built different. He played exceptionally for the Kiwis over the past 2 seasons. I really love Matsimoko, and I think that he's in for another big year in 2025. It's so underrated, his game. He's not been talked about at all on a lot of other podcasts. I love him. I love Matsimoko. He's one of my favourite players. KO Weeks at 6. I think that you can get what you can get out of KO Weeks at 6 that you can at fullback, which obviously allows Chevy Stewart to come in there at fullback. I think that you'll get a very hybrid fullback 5'8" sort of role here from KO Weeks, roaming both sides of the ruck, getting the ball in his hands, running really nice shapes. I think that you can get that footy from him at 5'8". Jamal Fogarty just running the side there at halfback. I think that's the best halves pairing for the Canberra Raiders moving forward. Joseph Tarpanay and Josh Papali'i, the 2 vets up front with Tom Starling starting at 9. A little bit of rumours around Tom Starling going to South Sydney, which as a South fan I love. I love players rumoured to South Sydney. I don't make these things up. This is legit rumours that are coming out too about Tom Starling going to South Sydney too. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. I don't think it's going to happen, but there have been conversations around it. Hudson Young for the Raiders to start in the left back row spot with Zach Hosking locking down that spot on the right side. He was exceptional to start 2024. Exceptional. So if he can get back to that level for footy and play that for the full season in 2025, injury-free, he's going to be an absolute weapon. And Corey Horsburgh there at 13, I think that he could kill it in that role. Very different to the 13s we're seeing nowadays, who are quite small, mobile, used to play in the halves, have that sort of ball-playing experience. Corey Horsburgh's got a pretty decent pair of hands on him. So if he can work on that ball playing and just really be an absolute animal through the middle, I think that he can do well in that 13 sort of role. And as I said, said, it is quite different to what we do see from a lot of other NRL sides. But in the same breath, I think it is very Ricky Stewart. Danny Levi there at 14. I got Ata Mariota, Morgan Smithies, and Simi Sasangi there on the bench for the Canberra Raiders. Levi obviously comes on at 9 off the bench. I think that you could either have Levi starting or off the bench, Starling starting or off the bench. It wouldn't make too much of a difference, in my opinion. Could go either way there. Wouldn't be too fast. Ata Mariota, I've got him also coming off the bench through the middle. I think that he is going to go to another level. He's going to be one of those guys that is just going to be so fun to watch going into the 2025 season. Morgan Smithies, I've got Morgan Smithies as well on the bench. The reason I don't have him at 13, I just watched his footy last year. He is more of a front rower. I don't think they have the answer at 13. I think that Corey Horsburgh could get to that level, but I just don't think that Morgan Smithies is the answer at 13. I think that he is more of a front rower, so I'd have him coming off the bench. And then Simi Sasangi, I've got him coming off the bench as well. To be honest, I think that he's one of those guys that might creep up on a few people and maybe lock down that 13 jersey. He has experience in the halves. I think that he could definitely be a guy with a bit of a bigger frame that potentially does lock down that 13 jersey if he has a big enough year. Hasn't got to that level yet, and we haven't seen that footy from him yet. But just with a little bit of experience in the halves, he's got great hands. There's a game that he filled in the halves and didn't do too bad of a job kicking-wise either. So maybe he's a guy that could lock down that 13 jersey too. And that's why I've got him in jersey number 17, because I really do feel like he's a guy that could excel in 2025. Savelio Tamale is the 18th man. I think that he could slot in pretty much anywhere in this back line. Obviously, depending on what happens with Ethan Strange, could obviously see Simi Sasangi slot in the centre. Savelio Tamale slot into the centres or onto the wing as well for Albert Hopewade. I just love Albert Hopewade, though. He was so strong throughout the 2024 season. Throughout 2023, he was great as well. I think that Albert Hopewade is more likely to start just with the lack of NRL experience that Savelio Tamale has. Obviously, haven't made his debut yet. So I think that he'll start the year in a reserve grade. But that's my Canberra Raiders side. Let's move on to the Newcastle Knights. And this is a side where I think they really could struggle going into 2025. I've got them and the Raiders probably the favourites for the spoon. I think that the Raiders could surprise a lot of people, as they tend to do every single year. But for Newcastle, I don't think they're going to be as lucky as they were in 2024 and obviously make that real late push to the 8. I think that they will really struggle unless they lock down this halves pairing. But let's talk about what their 17 could look like. We're obviously not doing a preview. We're doing a 17, their best 17. So let's have a look at it. I've got Kalen Ponga at fullback. I've got Greg Marziu and James Schiller on the wings. I've got Bradman Best and Dane Gagai in the centres. I've got Tyson Gamble and Jack Cogger in the halves. That's my best halves pairing. We really dissect this and what the halves could look like in the Jonah Pezzett podcast when we were talking about him, rumoured to be going to the Newcastle Knights. Obviously, he's signed with Melbourne now, but if you do want a bit more of a deeper analysis as to what the Knights halves pairing could look like, that's definitely a podcast that's worth listening to. But Jack Cogger, for me, is probably the best 7 at the club at the moment. Tyson Gamble is probably the best 6 in regards to, what we saw from them last year. And just partnerships-wise, I thought that these two did quite well together. If the Knights want to succeed, they just can't change their halves pairing. They've just got to keep it the same throughout the whole year. Leo Thompson and Tyson Frizzell starting in the front row. Now, obviously, Leo Thompson looks set to go to the Canberra Raiders, which is super unfortunate, and it does leave the Newcastle Knights in a little bit of a hole for the 2026 season. But, we're talking about 2025 here, and Leo Thompson is the best front rower at the club, so he starts. Tyson Frizzell, I think that with the lack of front rowers that they've got at the club at the moment, I think that Tyson Frizzell will progress to the middle of the field there in the front row. I've got Phoenix Crossland starting at 9. I think that he has to be the 9 moving forward, especially with all of the noise around Jaden Brayley and potentially moving to the Parramatta Eels. I think that Phoenix Crossland is your 9. You've got to, use him as a 9 because they don't really have too many of them at the Newcastle Knights at the moment either. So Phoenix Crossland to start at 9. I've got Kai Pearce-Paul and Dylan Lucas in the back row. Obviously, with Tyson Frizzell moving into the middle of the field, I've got Kai Pearce-Paul and Dylan Lucas both starting. The footy that Dylan Lucas played last year as well, you cannot keep him out of this 17. You just can't. He's got to be there, and he's got to start too. He is such a weapon. Really love Dylan Lucas and the footy that he played. He can play both sides of the field really well. Kai Pearce-Paul, his favoured side is obviously the left, so that works out really nicely. Dylan Lucas there on the right edge back row. I've got Adam Elliott at 13. I think that he had a really underrated season. He played some good football, so I don't see why he gets so much hate. I think that he's actually a lot better than what people say he is. And he had a strong season, to be honest, in 2024. The bench is Jaden Brayley, Cody Hopwood. I think that he'll work his way into the 17 too, obviously off the back of a very strong under-19s Origin debut. Jacob Saifidi and Matt Croker on the bench. Saifidi and Croker to play through the middle of the field. Cody Hopwood the same. I think all of these guys play through the middle. Obviously, Cody have that versatility. He can probably slot into the back row, but I think Lucas and Pearce-Paul will both play the full 80. And then Jaden Brayley, obviously, to slot into the number 9 role. 18th man is Fletcher Sharp. James Schiller, I really like James Schiller. He played great footy. He was dropped very unfairly from that Raiders side at the start of the year. I think that Fletcher Sharp as well. I think that I just want to see him develop as a fullback, so I'm not having him in my 17. And when you got a guy like James Schiller there who can play wing very well, it slots that hole very nicely. So Fletcher Sharp can go back to New South Wales Cup. He can develop as a fullback because he certainly has a few things to develop in his game to get to that real first grade level. He's certainly got a lot of talent, but he just isn't there yet. He just hasn't hit that ceiling yet. So I want to see him go back to the reserve grade and work on his game as a fullback rather than obviously buying his time and getting first grade experience, but that as a winger, not as a fullback. Yes, he was great on the wing for the Newcastle Knights. Yes, he has a lot of talent, but he does have a lot to work on in that fullback jersey. So that's where I want to see him work on his game at fullback in New South Wales Cup. James Schiller fills the role. Problem solved. Let's go through the Manly Seagulls 1 to 17. Now, big call right off the bat. Lehigh Hopewade is my fullback. I think that you've got to have him there at fullback. He's an absolute weapon of mass destruction, Lehigh Hopewade. Really talented footballer. He's got great skills, and I think that you've got to bring him through straight away, first grade fullback. Also, with Tom Trbojevic and his injury history over the past 4 years, I think it's a great opportunity and a great excuse, you could say, to move him into the centres and give him that roaming role just like he did for the Kangaroos. He could be the best centre in the game in that roaming capacity. We saw that for the Kangaroos. If we can replicate that in first grade in NRL, fuck me, it's going to be really scary what this side could become there with Tom Trbojevic in that roaming centre role. Lehigh at fullback developing his game, but also getting tips and tricks and mentorship from Tom Trbojevic throughout games as well, with him roaming at centre. So Lehigh fullback, I've got Tom Trbojevic and Tolu Kula in the centres. Tom Trbojevic right centre, I've got Tolu Kula there on the left side. Jason Saab is my left winger. The fact that right winger there for Jason Saab, the fact that he gets so much hate is just really confusing. It's really confusing. Jason Saab was outstanding for majority of the 2024 season. Yes, injuries have hurt him. Yes, there's a bit of defensive work he needs to do on his game. But fuck me, he's a talented winger, and he's the best winger in this side by a long shot. So he definitely is in my 17 to start on the right wing. Him and Tom Trbojevic together too is just going to be an absolute nightmare. Tolu Kula and Ruben Garrick would be on the left side. I've got Ruben Garrick moving back to the wing. It's his best position. That's exactly where I want to see him in 2025. So Garrick and Kula left side. Tom Trbojevic, Saab right side. Halves, Luke Brooks, DCE, front row. Another big call here for the Manly Seagulls. Jake Trbojevic moves into the front row. I've said it. I've called it. Jake Trbojevic is a front rower moving forward. He isn't a 13. The style of footy that Manly want to play doesn't suit Trbojevic there in the 13 jersey. He's progressed into a middle forward, in my opinion. So he's starting in the front row with Taniela Paseka. I've got Lachlan Croker at 9. Ben Travojevic starting in the left back row with Hamole Olakau'atu starting on the right side. I've got Jazz at Tavanga at 13. I think that he suits this side nicely and it suits the game, especially the game that Manly want to play that more mobile, fast-paced attack. And then I've got Jake Simpkin at 14 to obviously give Lachlan Croker a spell. I've got Ethan Bullymore. I can't take him out of the 17, unfortunately. Obviously, Siwa Takiaho is unfortunately the guy that misses out here because Ethan Bullymore is just outstanding in 2024. It was a real breakout year for Ethan Bullymore. So he's there at jersey 15. Jersey 16 is Nathan Brown. Jersey 17 is To'ofoa Sipley. That is a great, well-rounded forward pack there for the Manly Sea Eagles. As I said, Takiaho misses out, but he'll be great to mentor guys like Paseka, great to mentor guys like Sipley, Nathan Brown, be around these sort of guys as well. Even though Nathan Brown is a vet, I think that Siwa Takiaho, just overall in this pack, is going to be a great guy to have around the club and he's a great guy to bring in if there's injury as well. He is 34 years of age. I am looking towards the future here for the Manly Sea Eagles, and this side, this 17, it does replicate that. All right, let's go through the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs for 2025. Their 17 reads Connor Tracy. He's my fullback, obviously after a great 2024 season, looking to go again in 2025. Marcelo Montoya is probably the front runner in my opinion for that left wing spot. He's played more first grade. I think that, with how good Blake Wilson is, if Blake Wilson can grab that spot from Marcelo Montoya, all means, I love Blake Wilson. I think that he's a great player. I think that he will be in this side at some stage. But I do think that Marcelo Montoya, he's played more first grade. He hasn't come to the Bulldogs to play reserve grade, in my opinion. So I think that he will be the dude to take that left wing spot at least to start the year, and in my best 17 too, with how good Marcelo Montoya is, I think that he'll keep that spot too there on the left wing. Jacob Kiraz is on the right side. Right centre is Stephen Crichton. Left winger is Bronson Sherry. So Sherry and Montoya left, Stephen Crichton and Jacob Kiraz on the right side. Matt Burton and Toby Sexton are in the halves. I think this halves pairing is the Bulldogs' best. Obviously, Mitch Woods, I think he is going to, take a little while to obviously progress into this 17 when he does. I think that he's going to be, a 1 to 2 year process. I don't think he's going to be in there straight away, or at least this season. I think that Toby Sexton has the claim on that jersey at the moment. Max King and Josh Curran in the front row. I've got Reid Marnie at 9. I've also got Viliami Kikau and Jacob Preston in the back row with Kurt Mann at 13. That's pretty much not surprising to a lot of people. I think that's a lot of people do have for their forward pack for the Bulldogs. This is where things get a little bit pear-shaped, though. I have got Bailey Hayward, I've got Satili Tupanua, I've got Curtis Moran, and I've got Tom Amone with Ryan Sutton at 18th man. I think a lot of people have forgotten about Ryan Sutton. Obviously, plenty of injuries over the past 2 years. A lot of uncertainty around if he's going to be playing in Bulldogs colours again. He is in that squad at the moment, so I still have him, in and around first grade. He is a great front rower. But yeah, Tom Amone, obviously the new recruit, they've got him to be in this 17. They've got him to add a bit of starch to the pack. I still think the Bulldogs should stick to what's worked for them, which has been that mobile pack. But I do think that Tom Amone will be there as that big guy, obviously, along with guys like Max King in this pack, just to add a bit of size and grunt to the forward pack, and it's exactly what they've needed. But, Josh Curran, Kurt Mann, Tupanua, I think, will play through the middle. I love Tupanua through the middle. I talk about it all the time on the podcast, but there was one game, I think, when he was coming back from injury in 2023 against the Warriors, just after Anzac Day, I think, towards the back end of the season, when he was just absolutely tearing up through the middle. He came off the bench, played in the middle, a return game. He absolutely killed it and had one of the better games of his career. So, Tupanua for me, I think that he'll be a middle, a bit more of a mobile middle as well, a bit of ball skills, can fill in the back row and in the centres if there is obviously injury. I love that versatility there with Tupanua, what you get from him, obviously coming off the bench. Moran through the middle as well. I think that he might progress through onto an edge as well. I think that him sitting on an edge in any rugby league side would be great. I think that he'll have a pretty similar sort of run potentially to an Alex Seyfarth in 2025, where he might obviously slot onto a back row spot, depending on obviously how Jacob Preston goes and his form. Coming back from injury, he was quite good. So Depends what the plans are with Jacob Preston, but Curtis Moran, I think that he'll definitely be putting a lot of pressure in the back row sort of spots. But for me, just that smaller mobile guy coming through the middle, ton of heart. I just can't keep him out of my 17. And obviously either Tom Amone or Ryan Sutton there in jersey number 17. I think it will be Tom Amone, but Ryan Sutton just behind him. Blake Wilson obviously also pushing for first grade as well in this Bulldogs outfit. But that's how I see the Bulldogs lining up for the 2025 season. At least that's my best 17 for them throughout the year. Let's touch on the North Queensland Cowboys, their best side going into 2025. I've got Scott Drinkwater there at fullback. I've got Murray Taulagi on the left wing. I've got Robert Derby on the right side. I've got Zach Labart on the left wing. On the left centre. Spot. Haven't had enough coffee, as you can probably tell. Zach Labart there in the left centre spot. I've got Viliami Vailea there on the right side. I think the footy that he played last year was exceptional. I love Viliami Vailea, and him and Robert Derby could build a really mean combination there on that right side. Labart, more traditionally a right centre, but I think that obviously with that spot opened up there on the left side, he is going to pounce at it. Murray Taulagi as well. I think that he's in for a huge year as well, maybe to push back into the Origin arena. I've got Tom Dearden at 6, obviously. Jake Clifford at 7. The footy that we saw from Cliffo at the back end of the year just screams he's in for a huge 2025, and the progression that he's had coming back from the Super League, and the amount of improvement that we've seen from him towards the back end of that 2024 season, as I said, it just screams huge year in 2025. Griffin Neame and Jordan McLean, both of them to start in the front row. Reece Robson at 9. I love the size up front there too from Neame and McLean, contrasting from the 13 in Ruben Cotter. I've got John Bateman to start in the back row, obviously with the injury to Helam Lukey with that ACL. Obviously, he's going to be out for the whole 2025 season. I've got John Bateman now starting on the left back row with Nanai keeping his spot there on the right side. Cotter at 13, as we said. And then I've got Carl Lawton, Jason Taumalolo, Sam McIntyre, and then a guy that I think could be pushing for John Bateman's spot there on the left edge back row, Kai O'Donnell. Obviously played for the Canberra Raiders, went over to the Super League, obviously grew up in North Queensland and was in that system for quite a while. For him to return to that North Queensland system, obviously with the injury to Helam Lukey, it opens up a spot in the 17. But more so, I think that there's going to be a real battle between Bateman and Kai O'Donnell for that left back row spot. I think that he'll definitely be pushing for that jersey, if not a spot off the bench, like I've got him here, just playing through the middle of the park. And Lawton and Jackson Purdue, in my opinion, will be fighting for that 14 jersey as well. I've got Lawton there just because Robson played a lot of games through the middle of the park for the full 80 there at number 9. I don't like it. I want a guy like Reece Robson getting some spells out of that number 9 jersey. I hate him playing the full 80 minutes, especially when you're looking at this Cowboy side, a side that could really make a push for finals. I just don't like him for 27 games plus per year, playing 80 minutes at 9. It just screams injury, and he's been doing that for the past few years there for the Cowboys. So I just like having a guy like Carl Lawton, who you can obviously throw into number 9 for maybe 20 minutes or so, just to give him a bit of rest throughout games, depending on how he progresses. So Carl Lawton probably wins the spot at 14 for me. Purdue, though, will be certainly making a fight for it with his utility value. He can play fullback, can play in the halves, can play in the centres, as we've seen throughout the year. I really like Purdue as a 14 option there at the Cowboys. Cronulla Sharks, let's get straight into it. For the Cronulla Sharks, my fullback is Will Kennedy. The talk against Will Kennedy is really odd. He hasn't been playing terribly to the point where a lot of people are talking about him losing his spot. I don't see it. I think that he will keep his spot at least to start the year. But obviously you got a guy like Liam Mice and you got a guy like Cade Dykes. These sort of guys pushing for that fullback spot. So he will have pressure on that jersey for sure. But for it to come out and say that he's going to lose his spot, I think it's just dribble. I think it's ridiculous. Will Kennedy's the fullback for the Cronulla Sharks. I've got Ronaldo Mulatalo and Sione Katoa there on the wings. Kale Ito and Jesse Ramian there in the centres. I've got Nicho Hynes and Braden Trindle in the halves. Nicho Hynes is a 6 for me in 2025. I've got Trindle in the number 7 jersey. He's going to run the side. You've got Nicho Hynes who can obviously do his own thing, obviously create, but move both sides of the ruck, play a bit of a hybrid fullback 5'8" sort of role. I think that he could really suit that position, and we've seen glimpses of that obviously towards the back end of last year. But yeah, Nicho Hynes is more of a 6. I want to take all pressure off Nicho Hynes. I think Braden Trindle probably goal kicks too. And we'll talk about the goal kicking chart at the end of the video as well, and what we could see, who we could see kicking goals for each team. Which will be really important from a Supercoach sense. But yeah, Trindle for me, he's the number 7. He's steering the ship. In regards to the front rowers, I've got Toby Rudolph and Addin Fonua-Blake. They are going to be starting for me up front. Toby Rudolph's a good starter. Addin Fonua-Blake's going to be playing at least 60 minutes starting in the front row, similar to what he was doing at the Warriors. Blake Brayley, he's a number 9, starting number 9 for me. And look, again, I'm just going to lay down and then obviously, say that I was wrong at the start of last year when we were saying that he could play Origin. I'm going to double down on it, though. I'm going to say that he's a real smoky. Obviously, if there's injuries and things like that, a real smoky for the 14 jersey or even the 9 jersey if there's an injury to Reece Robson. I think that he's probably the next guy up, to be honest, if he has a really strong 2025 like he has in previous years. But Blake Brayley's the 9 for the Sharks. I've got Teague Wilton and Britton Nicola starting in the back row. Cam McInnes at 13. Daniel Atkinson, Tom Hazelson, Siasif Talakai, and Braden Hamlin-Uele off the bench. I think Hamlin-Uele is going to go to another level, come back into first grade. He's going to really solidify a spot in the 17. Tom Hazelton, him and Braden Hamlin-Uele coming through the middle. You got Talakai who can go on an edge or through the middle there at 13. And then Hazelton can just come on pretty much wherever you need him to, whether it be, any position from 1 right down to the 13. You can have Atkinson coming on in that sort of role. I think that he has great utility value. I don't think he'll be starting throughout the year, Atkinson, now that he's going to the Dragons as of 2026. But yeah, look, I think that he will be that 14 just with the value he has there as a utility. I think it's going to be very hard for the Sharks to keep him out of this 17. Let's go to the Roosters, the Sydney Poosters. Let's go through their 17 for next year. Again, another side that could really struggle next year too, just with a lot of the guys that they've lost, a lot of the experience that they've lost. We've got Sam Walker in here. I just want to make clear, this is a best 17. This is not a round 1 17. So my best 17 for the Roosters going into next year, it is James Tedesco at fullback. I've got Daniel Tupou and Dom Young on the wings. I've got Billy Smith and Robert Toya in the centres. I've got Sandon Smith and Sam Walker in the halves as my best 17. I think that's the best halves pairing and the future halves pairing for the Roosters, Sandon Smith and Sam Walker. I have got Nafa'u White and Lindsay Collins in the front row. I've got Brandon Smith at 9. I've got Angus Crichton at Butcher back row. I've got Victor Radley moving back into 13 with Connor Watson at 14, Dila Salva'a at 15, Spencer Leniu and Siwa Wong coming off the bench as well with the 18th man, Mark Nwonganitawase. I've got him at 18th man pushing for a spot in first grade. I think that Robert Toya being the out-and-out centre, coming through the grades, I want to see him get rewarded for that and obviously get that spot in the centres. But Mark Nwonganitawase with the footy that he's been playing during the preseason, or just how he's been training and travelling, and just some of the clips that we've seen of him and his talent from rugby union, but also training during the preseason. He's got so much skill where I just feel like he could kill it in that centre spot if they put him there too. So that's going to be a lovely battle to watch as we get closer to round 1. And I'd be really interested to see who starts in round 1 for the Roosters at right centre. Billy Smith for me is the obvious choice at left centre though. I think that he gets that spot. Obviously Tupou, Dom Young, your obvious wingers there as well for the Roosters for round 1. It's going to be interesting to see how this middle rotation and how the forwards are stacked. Obviously, Radley played a lot of footy in the back row on an edge there for the Roosters, so whether he goes there again or not, I like him at 13. I think his best position is 13 coming through the middle for the Roosters. But yeah, look, it'll be interesting to see if he's regarded as a middle or as an edge for the Roosters next year and where Connor Watson sits as well. I've got Connor Watson coming off the bench and providing impact and giving guys like Victor Radley a spell, or giving guys like Brandon Smith a spell there at 9 as well. I think that's Connor Watson's best role for the Roosters in 2024. I really like Nat Butcher. I think he's in for a massive year, training with Roger Fabry too, working on that speed that he has, just the lines that he runs as well. I think that he could have a huge year in 2025. Angus Crichton, obvious pick there for left back row. Nafa'u White, I think, is in for a huge year too. I've got him starting. I think that he takes that mantle. Spencer Lanu's a lot better off the bench. I think that really fixes that puzzle there. Losing a guy like Terrell May, who I would have had starting there. Nafa'u White, I think, fills that void very, very well. He's very highly regarded, obviously, with Trent Robinson as well. I think that Nafa'u White's a realistic option to start for the Roosters in the front row. More so than Spencer Lanu, who, as I said, is more of an impact guy off the bench. I think this is the best Roosters side you're going to get, and a lot of guys in this Roosters team, like Stila Silva, Siwa Wong, Nat Butcher, Nafa'u White, all of these guys in for massive years for the Roosters. But look, as I said, it could equally be a side that struggles as well going into next season. As I said, really excited to see this right centre battle. Robert Toya, hopefully he gets rewarded for obviously working his way through the grades and getting this opportunity. But equally, Mark Nawangani-Tawase, the talent that he has, he could easily take that spot as well. Moving closer and closer to the end here, let's go through the Penrith Panthers and what they might be looking like going into next year. For Penrith, I've got Dylan Edwards at fullback. Shocker. I've got Casey McLean and Brian To'o on the wings. Brian To'o's moved to the right side for me. I've got him on the right wing with Isaac Tungo at right centre. I love that combination. It worked very well at the back end of the year for the Panthers. I think that's the combination they go with for 2025. To'o and Tungo there on the right side. Paul Alamotti with Casey McLean. I've got them both on the left side. For the Penrith Panthers, a bit of a rookie left side and very risky. But I think that that's the way that they can go. And Casey McLean, I think, is in for a huge 2025. I think that he's the favourite for that jersey after the footy that we saw from him. New Zealand debut. I think he's just in for a huge year, Casey McLean. So left winger for me, starting with Paul Alamotti in that left centre role. But that could alternate and change as well. We could see Alamotti on the wing equally as well with Casey McLean in the centres. But I just feel like with Alamotti having a lot more NRL experience, he'll start at centre. You'll have Casey McLean there on the wing. But I think that equally it could be just as dangerous. Nathan Cleary and Blaze Talangi, it seems to be the most likely halves pairing for the Penrith Panthers. Obviously Blaze Talangi notably played a lot of 2024 in the centres and at fullback, not so much in the halves. I think he only had one game for Parramatta in the halves. Obviously played a few games for Parramatta in the lower grades in the halves though, so he does have that experience coming through grade and playing a little bit of 5'8". But the hints we did get from him playing 5'8" from the Samoa, it wasn't the best, but look, we said the same thing and two different positions, but I used this example before with Trent Liero moving into 13. It was a shocking 2 games in the trials with him at 13, and then by the end of the year, he was locked into that position. He killed it in that position there at 13 for Craig Bellamy. So, I think we could see a very similar sort of progression here where it might be a bit of a slow start while he gets used to playing that role full time and defending in the front line, more notably in the middle or closer to the middle. But I do think with Blaze Talangi, that he, by the end of the year, will be killing it in that role, and they're really going to work out and click, in that position as well. So it'd be really interesting to see how Blaze Talangi goes, but more notably, now Nathan Cleary goes, being a little bit more Mr. Independent and taking a little bit of more of the control of his side as well. Him and Luai do share it out quite a bit. So it will be quite interesting to see, Cleary take a lot more control. Blaze Talangi is probably going to have a little bit more of a run-centric type of game. So, yeah, it'll be really interested to see how that sort of goes, with Blaze Talangi obviously taking, as I said, a bit more of a run-centric type of role in this team. How that works, how that dynamic works with the halves. Let's go through the rest of the side, though. Lindsay Smith, Moses Leota in the front row. I've got Mitch Kenny 9, Isaiah Papali'i, Liam Martin back row. I've got Isaiah Yeo at 13. Sonny Luke, Liam Henry, Luke Garner, Scott Sorensen. That is my bench. And then I've got Dane Laurie there as 18th man. Now, in the previous predicted side, I did have Isaiah Papali'i starting in the front row. I just feel like Lindsay Smith has earned that jersey. I think he's going to take that jersey. In the front row there, it suits what the Panthers have been working with over the past few years. I just feel like with Papali'i moving into the middle, you are changing up a lot of what Penrith is used to there as well. As much as I love that fast style of play there for Penrith, I think it does change up the dynamic of what this side is used to or what it has been used to over the past few years. So I think that we will see Lindsay Smith, Leota and Yeo, that 8, 10 and 13. I think Papali'i will be on the left back row spot with Martin on the right side. And then obviously you'll have Scott Sorensen coming off the bench, Luke Garner obviously coming off the bench through the middle as well, along with Liam Henry. I love that bench. It's a much more mobile bench too, and you can get that X factor from the bench. But in regards to that starting dynamic, I don't think you want to sway too far away of what's won them the past 4 competitions in a row. So, I'm keeping it very similar dynamic now that I've had a real chance to look at the rosters and think about it. I love the more dynamic bench. Obviously having a lot of back rowers there, bar Liam Henry, who's obviously going to be coming through the middle. And then Sonny Luke, I love the footy that he played towards the back end of the year as well. I think that he'll be in that 14 jersey, taking pressure off a guy like Mitch Kenny. Dane Laurie, 18th man for me, obviously going to be very close to making that first grade side. And, if we don't get Blaze Salungi working out straight away, you probably will see, Dane Laurie maybe slot into that number 6 jersey, if not straight away, and slowly progress Blaze Salungi through a 14 jersey potentially as well. That's also possible for the Panthers. Let's talk about the Melbourne Storm, though, the last side that we've got here on our list. Let's go through this 17 for the Melbourne Storm, very similar to last year with the addition of their new signing. I've got Ryan Papenhuyzen at fullback. I've got Xavier Coates and Will Warbrick on the wings. Jack Howarth is at left centre. He's locked down that spot for me after a terrific back end of season. Nick Meaney, right centre. Cameron Munster and Jerome Hughes in the halves. I've got Stefano Utoikamanu starting up front with Josh King. Harry Grant at 9. Sean Bloor, Eli Katoa back row. Trent Liero, 13. And then I've got Tyron Wishart, Nelson Asofa Solomona, Lazarus Varlepu locking down a spot in this side at 16 with Alec McDonald in jersey number 17, the absolute workhorse that he is. You get the versatility off the bench with Nelson, who can obviously slot into the back row. Sean Bloor, Eli Katoa for me will be playing the full 80 or close to it, in my opinion. Wishart can just come on absolutely anywhere. So dangerous there in the 14 jersey. I think that's where he plays again in 2025. Other than that, the full side is pretty much exactly what you got in the grand final, bar obviously the new signing in Stefano Utoikamanu. So I can't wait to see how he goes under Craig Bellamy and the transition that he has. I think that he could be very close to Origin if he has a big start of season or, a big first half of the year under Craig Bellamy too in that Melbourne Storm outfit. I think he certainly will be starting. Not so much big minutes from Stefano, but I'd certainly think that he'll be starting games there in the front row alongside Josh King. It's a very nice looking forward pack for the Melbourne Storm. Guys like Christian Welsh, for me, miss out. Obviously wasn't in the side a lot due to injuries and things like that, but also was in and out of the side due to other reasons as well throughout the 2024 season. So there's also been a lot of reports linking him to other clubs too, and maybe a move to the Broncos is on the cards for Christian Welsh. But yeah, look, I think that he just misses out with a lot of the young guys coming through and obviously pushing for spots. I think that Christian Welsh does miss out on a spot in this 17. And I think realistically, that grand final team as well, he probably would have missed out, if Nelson Asofa Solomona was available too. So I do keep that in mind. Nelson obviously takes that spot there on the bench. Christian Welsh misses out. Atavalu Lasati, who you did see make his debut, came on in the back row and absolutely killed it. Out of the Penrith system, obviously just re-signed on a development deal with Melbourne. I believe that he will be pushing for a spot in this 17 too. And then the obvious one in Salavi Falongo as well. Saw Falongo just had an absolute mind blank then. As I said, probably need some more coffee very, very soon. But Falongo, I think that he will be obviously pushing for a spot there in this 17 too, probably at 14. I think that Pappy, fully fit, keeps that jersey in number 1. Obviously if there's injuries, we could see Falongo slot into the back line and things like that. But I think they'll be very unlucky to miss out. And Be very interesting to see what happens when it comes time to re-sign Falongo as well, going into the next few seasons. All right, there you go, guys. That is every single Team 17. It has been a long one, but I hope you enjoyed the journey. Let me know what things you would change about your Team's 17 or any team out of this video. What would you change out of their 17s? Leave it in the comment section below. We'll see you guys in the next one. Make sure you subscribe, become a part of the Big LEZ'S League community. See you guys next time.